Before 2019, the world was busy. People didn't live in fear of one another in our own communities. They met with friends and families gathering around for birthday parties without hesitation. Students attended school unmasked, had fun laughing, participated in after-school events without the fear of one another. Even businesses had a huge amount of traffic in and out the stores. People touching things, malls are packed, and Americans lived their lives to the fullest until COVID-19 changed everything. COVID-19 has changed how we all see each other and engage with one another. We now have stores shutting down, hospitals overflowing with COVID cases, and school environments changing. Now we will interview students and teachers as well as business owners about how COVID-19 has impacted their life.
So the pandemic affected all of my family individually very differently. For example, I was in high school, so obviously I had to go virtual. My brother was actually graduating college. He was on his last year, so it was a bit hard for him, but since it was towards the end of his year, it wasn't too bad. My sister was graduating high school, and she had to take her AP test at home. Like it was such a process. And my parents, my mother worked in a school, so it was obviously she wasn't able to work, and my father, luckily he was able to work from home. But the whole process with virtual learning was quite an experience, considering like we have never done it before. And I also had two younger brothers that weren't used to that whole setup at all. So the pandemic affected the way I learned to a good extent. Obviously, I've never done virtual learning before, and in my school, the first year of the pandemic, we didn't really do any like video calls or anything. So I was basically teaching myself. Like that's kind of how it felt. And in the beginning, it felt very weird. It felt like I wasn't even at school to begin with. But over time, I just thought of it as like, it's okay, like I'm gonna get through this, and I'm gonna obviously have to try my best considering I'm not getting any help. It's kind of just like here's an assignment, do it type of thing. But yeah, it was a little hard in the beginning, but the second year we had voice calls and video calls, so it was somewhat easier, even though the engagement didn't feel the same. It was a bit difficult considering that in the first year, obviously we had to be home, and we had like end of the year activities, like the school year was wrapping up. So it was a little hard at first, but it wasn't like too much of a challenge considering that luckily, at least for that year, my classes weren't too hard. Like I know some people had it more difficult with like AP classes, honors classes, but for me, for the most part, I understood the curriculum, understood what I was learning, so it wasn't too bad for me. I think what I really missed was like my social life, since I couldn't really obviously talk to anybody. I feel personally that most schools took a different approach in the beginning of the year. So I feel like my experience could have been somewhat better. Like I feel like if I had more guidance with my teachers, that could have made the process a lot easier. Like learning new materials without any voice calls or anything, like it was kind of hard. But I feel like when I had my teacher with the voice calls, it made it a lot easier. Like an actual human was teaching me, talking to me. So that was somewhat easier considering before I had nobody at all talking to me. But overall, I feel like towards the end, once like we stopped doing virtual learning, I learned a lot. I learned to like pay attention more. I learned to be more engaged in class, considering that since your teacher isn't there to ask you questions, you're the one that has to ask the questions yourself.
COVID affected me in a big way. I have my elderly grandmother and my mom, who of course I had to be careful with. And as a mother, I had my own children that I had to worry about. But in my career, it took a toll on my career and me as a person trying to transition to what the new world was going to be. So for me, it was a learning experience, an eye-opening experience. This was my first year in the job. It was a brand new job on campus, and my role is to support teachers with technology and infusing technology into the classroom. So for me, I had to take everything I was doing with teachers in the classroom, working one-on-one, and I had to do that virtually. And when teachers had to transition, it was very difficult for me to be able to reach them through a computer. It's scary, right? When you think that, we're getting to a world of normal, a better place, people are getting vaccinated, people are taking care of themselves. Now you hear of this new variant, and it's scary because you don't know how it's going to hit you personally or how it's going to hit people close to you, and you don't know what to do, and you just hope that at some point we can get back to some sort of normal. I thought in 2 weeks we were going to be back. I really had no ideas at the beginning. I was just thinking, we'll get back to it. So I work with the teachers closely in the classroom. I work with them during their prep periods to prepare exciting and engaging technology lessons. So for me, I had to pivot 300 or more teachers to now use technology all the time, when that was something that they may have not been used to or may have used it when they needed to. So it was very difficult for me to reach that many teachers just in an 8 to 3 time period. And it was stressful, frustrating, but I knew that I had a job that I had to do, so I just did what I had to do without thinking about it.
In the very beginning, you really didn't know what to expect, but you knew it was pretty serious when, there was, these huge news reports, and, at the time it was, a lot of conversation about, school being suspended and, not being able to go places. That's when it really kind of hit home, like, wow, this is serious, that it's affecting like everyday life. For me, my family, my friends, I've known people who had gotten COVID. I know a few people who had gotten COVID and died. So, from a personal aspect, it was just really, the level of concern really went up, when you come to the realization that, wow, I have, family and friends that have the pre-existing condition. So, wanting them to be safe, and at the same time, wanting to be safe yourself. Like, I didn't want to get sick, you know what I'm saying? So, having, family and friends that were deeply affected by it. And then also too, I have students and athletes that, family had died. So, the community of people that you are connected to, when they're going through it and they're, grieving and upset, it leaves you with a certain level of sadness, you know what I mean? So, that was, I would say that was probably the most personal, impact, as far as my family, and then not only the people I work with, but the kids that I, work with, students and athletes. Well, COVID and teaching, I guess having to teach virtually was sort of like the new thing, because, you're used to coming to your school or, your building, your facility, and having kids in class and being able to see them and interact with them, to have to go virtual. And, sometimes, we were able to have students turn on their cameras. Other times, some students didn't. So there was a disconnect. I mean, the information still got across as far as what we're teaching academically, but that personal connection was severed. I think that was probably the most difficult and challenging part of teaching during this time of COVID.
We have come a long way from 2019 to now, from when COVID-19 was very new to all of us. The nation was on lockdown, schools were hybrid, many businesses closed, many have lost jobs, steady income home, and some even lost their loved ones as a result to this pandemic. Despite the need for social distance, COVID-19 in a way has brought us closer to one another.